My son's wife said, "You're not coming on the summer trip. I want to bring my dog." Everyone laughed. When she realized I owned the hotel chain they stayed at, she fell to her knees. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." I spent 3 hours preparing that dinner. 3 hours chopping vegetables, seasoning the roast, setting the table with my best china. At 70 years old, my hands aren't as steady as they used to be, but I wanted everything to be perfect. I had something important to discuss with my family. My son Marcus arrived first with Leilani, his wife of 2 years. She walked into my dining room like she owned the place, her designer heels clicking against my hardwood floors. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, but her eyes held that familiar coldness whenever she looked at me. "Smells good in here," Marcus said, kissing my cheek. He was always kind to me, but I noticed how he immediately deferred to Leilani's mood. If she was unhappy, he became tense. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, smoothing my apron. "I made your favorite pot roast." Leilani examined her manicured nails. "I hope you remembered I don't eat red meat. Inez?" I felt my stomach drop. "Oh, I'm sorry. I made a salad too, and—" "It's fine." She cut me off with a wave of her hand. "I'll just pick at something." My daughter Sarah arrived with her husband Tom shortly after. Sarah had always been closer to me than Marcus, but even she seemed different around Leilani, more guarded, more careful with her words. As we sat down to eat, I felt my heart racing. I'd been planning this conversation for weeks, rehearsing what I would say. At my age, I didn't want to waste any more time being separated from my family. "This looks wonderful, Mom," Sarah said, cutting into her roast. "You always were the best cook. Remember when she used to make those chocolate chip cookies for our school events?" Marcus added. All the other kids were jealous. For a moment, I felt hopeful. These were the memories I cherished, the times when I felt needed and appreciated. Leilani scrolled through her phone while picking at her salad. "Speaking of events, Marcus, did you book the resort for our summer vacation?" "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "that's what I wanted to talk to everyone about tonight." The conversation stopped. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me, but Leilani's gaze was already suspicious. "I was hoping," I continued, my voice slightly shaking, "that maybe this year I could join you all for the summer trip. I know I haven't traveled much lately, but I'd love to spend that time with my family. Maybe get to know everyone better." The silence that followed felt endless. I watched Marcus glance nervously at Leilani, waiting for her reaction. Leilani set down her phone and looked directly at me. "Oh, Inez, that's really not going to work." "Why not?" I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. "Well, for starters, we've already made all our reservations. The rooms, the activities, everything. It would be way too complicated to change now." Her voice was sweet, but her words cut deep. "I could pay for my own room," I offered quickly. "I wouldn't want to impose on your arrangements." Leilani laughed, and the sound made my chest tighten. "It's not about money. It's about space and logistics. We're planning a very active vacation. Lots of hiking, water sports, things like that." "At your age—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "Mom's in great shape," Sarah protested weakly. "She walks 3 miles every day." "That's different from vacation activities," Leilani replied dismissively. "Besides, we're bringing Princess." "Princess?" I asked. "Our dog," Marcus explained, not meeting my eyes. "Leilani doesn't like to leave her with sitters." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "You're bringing the dog, but there's no room for me?" Leilani shrugged. "Princess is family too. And honestly, she's less maintenance than—" She gestured vaguely in my direction. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sarah stared at her plate. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. "That's a bit harsh, don't you think?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm just being practical," Leilani replied. "You always taught Marcus to be honest, right? Well, honestly, having you there would change the whole dynamic of our vacation. We want to relax, not worry about accommodating someone else's limitations." The words hit me like physical blows. I sat there, looking around the table at my family, waiting for someone to defend me, to say that what she'd just said was cruel and wrong. No one did. Marcus cleared his throat. Maybe next year, Mom. When we can plan better. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The dinner I'd spent hours preparing suddenly tasted like sawdust. But as I sat there, surrounded by my family yet feeling completely alone, I made a decision. They could exclude me from their vacation, but they had no idea who they were really dismissing. The weeks following that dinner were some of the loneliest I'd experienced in years. I tried to keep busy with my usual routines, morning walks, grocery shopping, reading in my garden. But everywhere I went, I felt the sting of my family's rejection. Sarah called once to check on me, her voice careful and apologetic. Mom, you know Leilani didn't mean anything personal, right? She's just very particular about her vacations. I wanted to scream. How was telling me I was more maintenance than a dog not personal? But I simply said, of course. Dear, I understand. I didn't understand. I probably never would. Marcus texted me updates about their travel preparations, probably trying to ease his guilt. Leaving tomorrow. We'll send pictures. As if pictures would somehow make up for being excluded from making memories with my own family. The morning they left, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and staring at the empty chair where Marcus used to sit when he visited as a child. He'd tell me about school, his friends, his dreams. Now he was 35, and I barely knew what made him happy anymore. My phone buzzed with a notification. Against my better judgment, I opened Instagram. I rarely used social media, but Sarah had helped me set up an account months ago to stay connected with the family. Leilani's profile was already flooded with vacation photos. There she was, posing in the lobby of what looked like an incredibly luxurious resort. Her caption read, "Finally arrived at Paradise Cove Resort. This place is absolutely divine. Only the best for our family vacation. Princess loves her ocean view room." I stared at the photo, taking in the opulent marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pristine beach. Even through the phone screen, I could tell this was an expensive place. Then I saw the resort's name again, Paradise Cove Resort. My coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering against the kitchen floor. Paradise Cove was one of mine. I sat there among the broken ceramic pieces, my heart pounding. Paradise Cove Resort was part of the hotel chain I'd quietly built over the past 40 years. It was my most exclusive property, the crown jewel of my portfolio. After my first husband died when Marcus was just 10, I'd taken his small life insurance payout and invested it in a rundown motel. I worked 18-hour days, cleaning rooms, managing books, slowly turning that property into something respectable. Then I bought another, and another. But I'd never told my children about the business. After years of struggling as a single mother, working multiple jobs just to keep food on the table, I'd wanted to protect my financial independence. I'd seen too many women lose everything to family members who thought they knew better, so I'd kept it separate. The hotels were registered under my maiden name, managed through a trust. My family knew I was comfortable in retirement, but they had no idea I owned a chain of luxury resorts across 3 states. And now my daughter-in-law, the woman who'd told me I was too much maintenance for a family vacation, was posting photos from my most expensive property. I cleaned up the broken cup with shaking hands, my mind racing. How much was this costing them? Paradise Cove's ocean view suites started at $800 a night during peak season. The pet-friendly rooms were even more expensive. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the resort's reservation system. There it was, a 7-night stay for the Richardson family, booked in the Princess Suite. The irony wasn't lost on me that they'd named their room after the dog they'd chosen over me. The total cost for their week, $12,000. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers on the screen. Marcus had a decent job as an accountant, but this was well beyond his usual vacation budget. Leilani didn't work, claiming she was pursuing her wellness brand on social media. My phone kept buzzing with more photos. Leilani at the spa, Leilani by the infinity pool, Leilani and Marcus at the resort's 5-star restaurant, Princess the dog lounging on Egyptian cotton sheets. Each photo felt like a slap in the face. They were living in luxury at my resort, probably putting the entire trip on credit cards they couldn't afford, while I sat alone in my kitchen mourning the family vacation I'd been excluded from. The bitter irony was suffocating. They'd rejected me, the grandmother and mother, but they were more than happy to enjoy the fruits of my labor without knowing it. I thought about calling Marcus, telling him the truth. But what would I say? That I'd been secretly successful all these years? That they were vacationing at my resort after telling me I wasn't welcome? Instead, I made a different decision. I picked up my phone and called the Paradise Cove front desk. Paradise Cove Resort, this is Amanda. How may I help you? This is Inez Morrison, I said, using my business name. I need to schedule an inspection visit. This week. Of course, Mrs. Morrison. When would you like to arrive? I looked at another photo Leilani had just posted, her laughing on the beach while Princess played in the sand. Tomorrow morning, I said. I want to see exactly how my resort is being enjoyed. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Purpose. They thought they knew me, thought they could dismiss me like an inconvenience. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The drive to Paradise Cove took 4 hours, but I barely noticed the time passing. My mind was spinning with questions I'd never thought I'd have to ask. How long had they been planning this vacation? How did they choose my resort out of hundreds of options? And most painfully, what else didn't I know about my own family? I checked into the resort using my business credentials, requesting a room in the East Wing, far enough from the Princess Suite to avoid an accidental encounter, but close enough to observe. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was essentially hiding in my own hotel. Mrs. Morrison, the front desk manager David, greeted me warmly. It's wonderful to see you again. How long has it been? Too long, I replied, keeping my voice low. I'd always maintained a hands-off management style, trusting my staff to run the day-to-day operations. Most guests had no idea who I was, which suited me perfectly. I'm here for a quiet evaluation. I don't want to disrupt the guest experience. Of course. Is there anything specific you'd like us to monitor? I hesitated. The Richardson party in the Princess Suite. I want to know about their interactions with staff, their behavior, everything. David nodded professionally, though I caught a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. I'll have the department heads prepare reports. My room was lovely. Ocean view, tastefully decorated, the kind of luxury I'd worked decades to create. But I couldn't enjoy it. Every comfort reminded me that my family was experiencing this same luxury while actively excluding me from their lives. I spent the afternoon reviewing financial reports and guest surveys, but my mind kept wandering to the family just 3 floors below me. What were they doing right now? Were they happy? Did Marcus ever think about me during their perfect vacation? At dinner time, I made my way to the resort's main restaurant. I chose a corner table with a view of the entire dining room, hiding behind a menu while scanning for familiar faces. I didn't have to wait long. They entered like they owned the place. Leilani wore a flowing white dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Marcus looked handsome in his resort casual clothes, but I noticed how he kept checking his phone, probably worrying about the cost of everything. What broke my heart was seeing how relaxed and happy Marcus looked. When was the last time I'd seen him smile like that? When was the last time we'd shared a meal that made him laugh? They were seated at the best table in the restaurant. Ocean view, private, exactly where I would want my family to sit if I were treating them to dinner. The hostess fussed over them, probably because they were staying in the Princess Suite, which came with VIP treatment. I watched Leilani order the lobster without even looking at the price. $85. Marcus ordered the ribeye steak. $68. They ordered a bottle of wine that I knew cost $200. As I sat there with my own modest dinner, I did quick math in my head. This single meal was costing them more than $400 for one dinner. Is everything satisfactory, Mrs. Morrison? I looked up to find David standing beside my table, discreet and professional. How are the Richardsons being treated? I asked quietly. Very well, ma'am. Though I should mention, he paused, glancing around to ensure we weren't overheard. There have been some incidents. My stomach clenched. What kind of incidents? Yesterday, Mrs. Richardson was quite upset with housekeeping because they didn't have the specific brand of bottled water she requested. She made the housekeeper cry. Today, she complained to the concierge that the beach sand was too hot for her dog's paws and demanded we provide some kind of cooling solution. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. My staff prided themselves on exceptional service, but they were human beings, not miracle workers. How did the staff handle it? Professionally, as always, but Mrs. Richardson has been demanding. She's also posted several reviews on social media criticizing various aspects of the resort, even while staying here. I pulled out my phone and found Leilani's Instagram. Sure enough, there were new posts. One complained about the subpar spa service, despite the photo showing her enjoying a massage. Another criticized the limited room service menu, though Paradise Cove offered 24-hour gourmet dining. She was literally biting the hand that fed her, posting negative reviews about my resort while staying in my most expensive suite. There's something else, David continued. The credit card they used for incidentals was declined twice today. Mr. Richardson had to call the bank both times. I felt a chill run through me. They were maxing out credit cards for this vacation. Marcus was probably stressed beyond belief about money, but putting on a brave face for his wife. Thank you, David. Please continue monitoring the situation and ensure the staff knows they don't have to tolerate abuse, VIP guest or not. After David left, I watched my family finish their expensive dinner. Leilani was animated, clearly enjoying herself, while Marcus looked increasingly tense as he reviewed the check. I saw him close his eyes for just a moment before pulling out his wallet. They had no idea I was watching. No idea that every dollar they were spending was ultimately mine. No idea that the woman they deemed too much maintenance for their vacation was sitting 30 feet away, paying for their luxury through decades of hard work they'd never acknowledged. As they left the restaurant, Leilani linked her arm through Marcus's and said something that made him smile. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I'd raised, the one who used to tell me about his dreams. But that little boy had grown into a man who let his wife exclude his mother from family vacations. And now I was watching him struggle to pay for pleasures at my own resort. Tomorrow, I decided, it was time for a closer look at exactly what my money was buying. I woke up the next morning with a knot in my stomach. After yesterday's observations, I knew I needed to see more, to understand exactly how my family was behaving at my resort. But I also knew that eventually, our paths would cross. I dressed carefully that morning, a simple navy dress, comfortable shoes, my hair pulled back neatly. I wanted to look professional but not out of place among the resort guests. My first stop was the spa, where Leilani had posted complaints about the service. I found Maria, the spa manager, looking unusually frazzled. "Mrs. Morrison," she said quietly when she saw me, "I'm so glad you're here. We've been having some challenges with one of our VIP guests. Tell me what happened." Mrs. Richardson came in yesterday demanding a full-body massage, facial, and mani-pedi, but she wanted to bring her dog into the treatment rooms. When we explained our health code policies, she became very upset. She accused us of false advertising because our website mentions being pet-friendly. I felt my jaw clench. "What did you do?" "We offered to arrange pet-sitting services so she could enjoy her treatments, but she said we were being unreasonable. Then she left a 1-star review online saying our staff was rude and inflexible. This was exactly the kind of behavior that could damage my resort's reputation. Paradise Cove had spent years building its 5-star rating, and Leilani was attacking it from the inside. "I want you to document everything," I told Maria. "Every interaction, every complaint, every unreasonable demand." From the spa, I walked to the pool area. It was a beautiful morning, and the infinity pool sparkled in the sunlight. I found a lounge chair with a clear view of the VIP section and settled in with a book, hoping to blend in with the other guests. I didn't have to wait long. Leilani emerged from the resort in a designer bikini that probably cost more than most people's car payments. She was pulling Princess on a jeweled leash, heading straight for the pool area. "Excuse me," she called to the pool attendant, a young man named Carlos, whom I'd known since he started working here 3 years ago. "I need a cabana, the biggest one you have, and I need it cleaned with hypoallergenic products because of my dog's sensitivities." Carlos smiled politely. "Of course, ma'am. Let me check our availability. I don't want to check availability, Leilani snapped. I want a cabana, now. Do you know what suite I'm staying in? Do you know how much money I'm spending here? I watched Carlos's smile falter slightly. Yes, ma'am. Let me see what I can arrange. As Carlos hurried away, I felt my blood pressure rising. This was my employee, a kind young man working his way through college, being spoken to like a servant. Leilani claimed the best lounge chairs in the VIP section, spreading her belongings across 3 chairs even though it was a busy day and other guests were looking for seating. Princess immediately jumped into the pool, despite the clearly posted signs about pets in the water. Ma'am, another staff member approached carefully. I'm sorry, but pets aren't allowed in the main pool area. We have a special dog beach just down the... Are you serious right now? Leilani's voice carried across the entire pool deck. This is supposed to be a luxury resort. I'm staying in your most expensive suite, and you're going to tell me where my dog can and can't go? Other guests were starting to stare. I saw a family with small children move to the other side of the pool, clearly uncomfortable with the scene Leilani was creating. I understand your frustration, the staff member said, maintaining his professional demeanor. But health regulations require... I don't care about your regulations, Leilani cut him off. Get me your manager. Actually, get me the owner. I'm going to make sure everyone knows how poorly guests are treated here. I stood up from my lounge chair and walked toward the commotion. My heart was pounding, but I felt strangely calm. After 40 years of building this business, after decades of creating jobs and providing beautiful experiences for thousands of guests, I wasn't going to sit quietly while someone destroyed what I'd worked for, especially not someone who'd excluded me from my own family. Is there a problem here? I asked, approaching the group. Leilani turned toward me, her eyes scanning me dismissively. Who are you? I'm a guest here, I said simply, but I couldn't help noticing the disturbance. This is supposed to be a peaceful environment. Mind your own business, Leilani snapped. This doesn't concern you. Actually, I said, my voice growing stronger, when someone's behavior affects other guests' enjoyment, it becomes everyone's business. Leilani looked me up and down, taking in my simple dress and modest appearance. Let me guess. You're what? A retired teacher? Maybe a nurse? Someone who thinks they understand hospitality because they stayed at a Holiday Inn once? The insult stung, but not for the reasons she intended. It stung because this was how she saw people she considered beneath her. This was how she probably saw me at that dinner weeks ago, just an old woman with nothing valuable to contribute. Something like that, I replied evenly. Well, retired teacher, she said with dripping sarcasm. Some of us can actually afford to stay at places like this. Some of us have a right to expect proper service. So why don't you go back to your little book and let the adults handle this? I looked around the pool area. My staff was watching nervously. Other guests were staring in discomfort. Princess was still paddling around the pool, trailing expensive dog hair in water that families wanted to enjoy. You're right, I said quietly. Some of us do have rights here, and some of us understand what this place really means. Leilani laughed mockingly. Oh, please. What could someone like you possibly understand about a place like this? I took a deep breath, looking at this woman who'd excluded me from my family, who was now trying to humiliate me at my own resort. More than you know, I said. That's when David appeared, having been summoned by the staff. His eyes met mine briefly, and I saw him suppress a smile. Is there an issue here? He asked professionally. Yes, Leilani said triumphantly. This old woman is harassing me, and your staff won't accommodate my reasonable requests. David looked at me with perfectly feigned confusion. I'm sorry. Ma'am, are you a guest here? I smiled at him. Actually, David, I think it's time we clarified exactly who I am. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. I could see Leilani's confusion as she looked between David and me, trying to understand what was happening. Other guests had stopped their conversations, sensing something significant was about to unfold. Mrs. Morrison, David said clearly, his voice carrying across the pool deck. I wasn't expecting you to handle guest relations personally today. I watched the color drain from Leilani's face as she processed the name, Morrison. The same name on every piece of Paradise Cove stationery, every welcome sign, every staff badge. I'm sorry, she stammered. Did he just call you Mrs. Morrison? Inez Morrison, I said simply. I own Paradise Cove Resort. I own this entire property. The silence that followed was deafening. Leilani's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Princess continued splashing in the pool, oblivious to the moment that was reshaping her owner's entire world. That's impossible, Leilani whispered. You're Marcus's mother. You're you live in that little house. That little house is where I choose to live, I said calmly. And yes, I am Marcus's mother. The mother you told wasn't welcome on your family vacation. I saw Leilani's hands begin to shake as she realized the implications. Every luxury she'd enjoyed, every expensive meal, every spa treatment she'd complained about, every staff member she'd berated, it all belonged to the woman she'd dismissed as too much maintenance. Mrs. Richardson, David said professionally. Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private? But Leilani wasn't moving. She was staring at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief. How long have you owned this place? 40 years, I replied. I bought my first motel when Marcus was 10 years old. Built it into this. I gestured around us at the pristine pool, the manicured gardens, the luxury that surrounded us. Every room, every restaurant, every amenity you've enjoyed this week, I created it. Leilani sank into one of the lounge chairs she'd claimed, her designer bikini suddenly looking ridiculous against her pale, shocked face. The credit cards, she whispered. We maxed out our credit cards for this vacation. I know, I said gently. My staff told me about the declined payments. You've been watching us? Her voice cracked. I've been watching my resort being enjoyed by the family that excluded me from enjoying it with them. Other guests were starting to whisper among themselves. I could see phones being pulled out, probably to record what was clearly becoming a dramatic scene. But I didn't care about the audience anymore. This was between Leilani and me. But why didn't you tell us? She asked desperately. Why didn't Marcus know? Because I learned a long time ago that financial independence means keeping some things private, I said. I wanted to protect what I'd built. I wanted to make sure that if anyone loved me, it was for who I am, not what I own. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She'd rejected me for who I appeared to be, while unknowingly enjoying the fruits of who I actually was. Mrs. Morrison? David interrupted gently. Should I have security escort Mrs. Richardson back to her suite? I looked at Leilani, huddled in the chair, her confidence completely shattered. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a larger part of me felt something else, vindicated. No, I said. Mrs. Richardson is still a guest here. For now. I turned to address Leilani directly. You have 2 more days left on your reservation. I suggest you use that time to think about how you treat people you believe can't fight back. Inez, please, she started, but I held up my hand. I spent weeks hurt by your rejection. I spent hours wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't worthy of being included in my own family's vacation. But watching you these past 2 days, I understand now. It was never about me. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. It was about your need to control and diminish others. Unfortunately for you, you chose the wrong person to diminish. Leilani's eyes filled with tears. What are you going to do? Are you going to kick us out? Ruin our vacation? I considered her question. The old me, the hurt mother who'd sat alone at that dinner table, might have wanted revenge, might have wanted to embarrass her the way she'd embarrassed me, but standing here in the resort I'd built with my own hands, surrounded by the success I'd created through decades of hard work, I realized something important. I didn't need revenge. I had something much more powerful. I'm not going to ruin your vacation, Leilani, I said calmly. But I am going to make some changes. I turned to David. Mrs. Richardson's room service charges, spa treatments, and restaurant meals will now be billed at standard rates, not VIP rates. She'll pay full price for everything from this moment forward. Leilani gasped. What does that mean? It means, I said, that the family who couldn't find room for me at their vacation will now pay the actual cost of the luxury they're enjoying. No more discounts. No more special treatment. No more subsidizing your experience at my expense. I watched the math dawn on her face. The meals alone would cost them thousands more than they'd budgeted. You can't do this, she protested weakly. Actually, I said, I can do whatever I want. It's my resort. I began walking away, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Leilani? Princess needs to get out of the pool. Health regulations, you understand. As I walked back toward the resort, I heard her calling after me, her voice desperate and shrill, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. I felt powerful. I spent the rest of that day in my office at the resort, reviewing reports and trying to process what had just happened. Every few minutes, David would update me on the Richardson family's activities. Marcus had returned from a golf outing to find Leilani in hysterics. There had been a heated argument in their suite. Room service had been canceled. Their dinner reservation had been moved from the premium restaurant to the casual cafe. Around 6 in the evening, my phone rang. Marcus. Mom. His voice was strained, exhausted. We need to talk. Do we? I asked calmly. Leilani told me what happened at the pool. She told me about the resort. Is it true? Do you really own this place? I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the beach where families were enjoying the sunset. Yes, Marcus. I own Paradise Cove. I own 12 resorts across 3 states. Silence. Then, quietly, why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to protect what I'd built. Because I learned that some things are safer when they're private. I paused. And because I wanted to know that if my family loved me, it would be for me, not my money. But Mom, we would never, wouldn't you? I interrupted gently. Marcus, 3 weeks ago your wife told me I was too much maintenance for a family vacation. She preferred to bring a dog instead of your mother. Now she's spending $12,000 at my resort while I sit alone in my little house, excluded from my own family. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. I didn't know about the money. I didn't know this would cost so much. I've been putting everything on credit cards. I know, I said softly. My staff told me. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up to her. I should have invited you myself. For a moment, I felt the familiar tug of maternal instinct, the urge to comfort him, to make everything okay. But I'd spent too many years making everything okay for everyone else. Yes, I said simply. You should have. Another long silence. What happens now? I had been thinking about that question all afternoon. What did happen now? I could forgive and forget, pretend this had never happened, go back to being the accommodating mother who accepted whatever scraps of affection her family offered. Or I could choose something different. Now, I said, you finish your vacation, you pay your bills, and when you get home, we'll see if anything has really changed. Are you cutting us off? Financially, I mean? I almost laughed. Marcus, you never knew I had anything to cut off. How can I cut off something you didn't know existed? After I hung up, I sat in my office as the sun set over the ocean. 40 years ago, I'd been a struggling single mother, working multiple jobs, dreaming of financial security. I'd built this empire one brick at a time, one satisfied guest at a time, one successful year at a time, and I'd done it all while being told I wasn't enough by people who had no idea what I was capable of. The next morning, I checked out of my own resort. As I walked through the lobby with my single suitcase, I saw the Richardson family at the front desk. Marcus looked haggard, probably from a sleepless night calculating their expenses. Leilani stood beside him, her designer clothes wrinkled, her perfect composure completely gone. Our eyes met across the lobby. I could see her start to move toward me, probably to apologize or beg, or try to somehow undo what had been revealed. But I simply nodded politely and continued walking. I didn't owe her a confrontation. I didn't owe her forgiveness. I didn't owe her anything. The drive home was peaceful. I stopped at a roadside cafe for lunch, something I never would have done when I was constantly worried about my family's approval. I took my time, enjoyed my meal, chatted with the waitress about her college plans. When I arrived back at my house, my small, comfortable, deliberately modest house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I felt free. 3 days later, Sarah called. Mom, Marcus told me everything. About the resort, about what Leilani said to you. I'm so sorry. Thank you, sweetheart. Why didn't you ever tell us? About the business, I mean. I considered my answer carefully. Because I needed to know who I was beyond what I could provide for others. And I needed to know who you all were, too. And now you know? Now I know. 2 weeks passed before Marcus called again. When he did, his voice was different, humbler. Mom, I've been thinking about everything. About how we treated you. About what kind of man I've become. I want to make this right. How do you plan to do that? I don't know yet, but I want to try, if you'll let me. I looked around my peaceful kitchen, at the flowers I'd planted in my garden, at the books I'd been reading without interruption. I thought about the woman I'd been before that dinner, always waiting for my family's approval, always trying to fit into spaces that didn't welcome me. That woman was gone. You can try, I said finally. But Marcus, I won't be the same mother you remember. I won't make myself smaller to make others comfortable. I won't accept disrespect for the sake of keeping peace. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't about money or resorts or business. This is about basic human dignity. Something I forgot I deserved until I watched your wife treat my employees the way she treated me. 6 months later, Marcus and I meet for lunch once a month. Just the two of us. We talk about his work, my travels, books we've read. He never brings Leilani, and I never ask about her. Sarah and I have grown closer than we've been in years. She understands now why I kept my success private, and she respects the boundaries I've established. As for Leilani, I heard from Sarah that the credit card bills from their Paradise Cove vacation caused serious financial strain. Marcus insisted they attend marriage counseling to address their communication and respect issues. I don't know if it's working, and honestly, I don't need to know. I still live in my small house, still take my morning walks, still tend my garden. But now I also travel to my resorts, take photography classes, visit art museums. I live for myself in ways I never allowed myself before. Last week I received a wedding invitation. A young woman whose college education I'd quietly sponsored through a scholarship program was getting married. She wanted me to be there for the most important day of her life. I attended the wedding and sat in the front row, not because I was family, but because I'd earned that place through kindness and generosity freely given. That's when I understood the difference between demanding respect and deserving it, between being needed and being valued, between being someone's obligation and being someone's choice. I had spent 70 years learning that lesson, but it was worth the wait. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.